Imagine your entire family screaming at each other while the Christmas turkey is still sitting raw on the counter, and your mother is sobbing into a dish towel because your sister just revealed a secret that was meant to stay buried for a lifetime. That was my Christmas morning, and honestly, I still can't breathe when I think about the look on my father's face when the truth finally shattered our perfect holiday tradition. It wasn't just a small argument over politics or who forgot to bring the cranberry sauce. It was a full-scale nuclear meltdown that ended with police sirens at the end of the driveway, and me standing in the snow with nothing but my coat and a sense of absolute betrayal. Was I wrong for being the one to finally pull the trigger on the silence? Or would you have sat there and let the lies rot your family from the inside out just to keep the peace for one more day? I need you to listen to how this unfolded and tell me if I'm the villain here. Because right now, half my relatives aren't speaking to me and the other half are acting like I'm some kind of hero for ruining the most wonderful time of the year. To understand how we got to that point, you have to understand the dynamic of the Miller family Christmas. My mom, Diane, is the type of woman who starts planning the seating chart in August. She lives for the aesthetic of the holiday. The perfectly coordinated wrapping paper, the expensive ornaments, and the image of a happy, functional family. My dad, Robert, is a high-level executive who values reputation above everything else. Growing up, we weren't allowed to have problems. We were only allowed to have solutions. Then there's my older sister, Sarah. Sarah has always been the golden child, the one who married the perfect guy, Marcus, and has the perfect house. I've always been the black sheep, the one who moved to the city to pursue a career in art rather than corporate law, and the one who usually gets stuck at the kids' table even though I'm 27 years old. This year, the tension was already high because my brother Leo was bringing his new girlfriend, Chloe, home for the first time. Chloe is outspoken, tattoos on her arms, and definitely not the country club type my parents prefer. I knew from the moment we stepped into the house on December 24th that the air felt heavy, like a storm was about to break. Every floorboard in that house seemed to groan under the weight of the secrets we were all carrying. My parents' house is one of those massive, sprawling estates where you can go hours without seeing another person. Yet the tension made it feel like a claustrophobic cage. My mom had spent thousands on the decorations this year. Garlands draped over every mantel, 3 separate Christmas trees, and a scent of cinnamon and pine that felt suffocatingly artificial. She was vibrating with a nervous energy that I'd seen many times before, usually right before she has a complete nervous breakdown. She kept adjusting the placement of the silver nutcrackers, as if their exact alignment could prevent the collapse of our family unit. My dad was even worse. He was drinking scotch at 10 a.m., hiding in his study under the guise of closing one last deal. But I could see the lines of exhaustion on his face. He's always been the pillar of the community, but he looked like a man who knew his foundation was cracking. He's the kind of man who would rather lose a limb than lose face in front of the country club crowd. He spent the entire morning criticizing the way I parked my car, the way I dressed, and the fact that I hadn't settled down with someone respectable yet. The psychological pressure in that house was like a physical weight on my chest. I remember looking at the portraits of us in the hallway, the forced smiles, the stiff poses, and realizing we were all just actors playing roles in a play my father wrote 30 years ago. Then there was Sarah. She arrived in her luxury SUV, looking like $1 million, but acting like a nervous wreck. She usually boasts about her latest vacation or Marcus's recent promotion. But this time she was oddly quiet about their finances. Marcus, usually the loudmouthed life of the party, couldn't even meet my eyes. He kept pacing the hallway, taking important calls that I now realize were probably from debt collectors or bank managers. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, his eyes bloodshot and his hands trembling every time he reached for his phone. Sarah kept touching her expensive diamond necklace, as if she was checking to make sure it hadn't turned into lead. It was a performance of wealth that was starting to fray at the edges. The fighting started almost immediately, but it began small. It was the passive-aggressive comments my mother made about Chloe's outfit, or the way my dad kept checking his work phone during the mandatory family puzzle time. He actually snapped at Chloe for mentioning she worked in a tattoo parlor, telling her it wasn't a real profession, in front of everyone. Leo defended her, of course, and for a second, I thought the explosion would happen then, but Mom stepped in with her, Everything is fine, smile and forced us to sing carols. It was the most awkward hour of my life. We were standing around the piano, singing about joy and peace, while Leo glared at my dad, and Chloe looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole. My mom was singing louder than everyone else, her voice cracking as she tried to drown out the palpable resentment in the room. Sarah was acting strangely twitchy, clutching her wine glass like a lifeline and snapping at Marcus every time he tried to touch her shoulder. I caught them whispering in the kitchen late that night, a frantic, hissed conversation about the money and how much longer they could hide it. I had gone down to get a glass of water, trying to avoid the heavy silence of my childhood bedroom. I stood in the shadows of the pantry, my heart hammering against my ribs. I heard Marcus say, "Sarah, your dad is going to find out eventually that we took the bridge loan from the business account." And Sarah's voice was trembling as she replied, "Not if we get the inheritance early, he won't. I just need him to sign the trust papers tomorrow. He's distracted, he won't check the fine print." I felt a cold chill run down my spine. They weren't just struggling. They were stealing from the family firm that my dad had spent 30 years building. They were planning to trick an aging man into signing over control of his life's work just to cover up their reckless spending on luxury cars, designer bags, and a lifestyle they couldn't afford. The level of betrayal was staggering. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a calculated, predatory move against her own father. I didn't sleep at all that night. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind howl outside, wondering if I should be the whistleblower. In our family, telling the truth is often treated as a bigger sin than the lie itself. If I spoke up, I'd be the one who ruined the holiday. If I stayed silent, I'd be an accomplice to my father's ruin. I kept thinking about the employees at my dad's firm, the people whose pensions and salaries were tied to that business account. If Sarah and Marcus drained it, they weren't just hurting our family, they were destroying the lives of dozens of innocent people. Christmas morning arrived with a fake cheer that felt like sandpaper. We were all gathered around the tree, opening gifts that nobody really wanted while Mom took photos for her social media. She was directing us like movie stars. "Move closer, Robert. Smile, Sarah. Put that gift bag in the shot." Every time the camera flashed, the smiles dropped instantly. It was like watching a play where everyone had forgotten their lines. The air was thick with the smell of roasting ham and expensive perfume, but it felt like the air in a tomb. Leo and Chloe were trying to stay out of the crossfire, sitting on the far end of the sofa, but Dad started in on Leo about his lack of ambition. And within 10 minutes, they were shouting about life choices over the sound of Bing Crosby singing "Silent Night." Dad started comparing Leo to Marcus, calling Marcus a real man who understood the value of the family legacy. He told Leo that if he didn't shape up, he'd be cut out of the will entirely. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it. I looked at Marcus, who was nodding along to Dad's praise while literally sweating through his expensive cashmere sweater. Marcus even had the audacity to give Leo a helpful lecture on fiscal responsibility, all while he was sitting on a mountain of stolen debt. The volume kept escalating. Mom was trying to hush everyone, her voice getting higher and more desperate, until Sarah suddenly burst into tears. But they weren't "I'm overwhelmed" tears, they were "I'm about to deflect" tears. She saw me looking at her, really looking at her, and she knew I knew. She pointed at me and screamed that the reason the family was falling apart was because I was judging everyone, and acting holier than thou since I arrived. She claimed I was poisoning the atmosphere with my negative energy, and that I had always been jealous of her success. She was trying to shift the focus before I could mention what I heard in the kitchen. She even accused me of stealing a piece of jewelry from her room earlier that morning, a total lie she fabricated on the spot to turn Dad against me. She started listing all the troubles I'd caused over the years, my choice of major, the time I got a speeding ticket in college, my lack of a proper job. As if my life choices were the reason she was a criminal. The room went silent. All eyes were on me. My dad looked at me with that disappointed scowl he's perfected over 2 decades. My mom started wailing about how I always ruin things, how I can't just be normal for one day. And there I was, holding the secret that would actually destroy the family, wondering if I should just take the hit or let the truth out. I felt the heat rising in my neck, the familiar sting of being the family scapegoat for things I didn't even do. But this time, The stakes were too high. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. I was being scapegoated for the failures of the golden daughter, while she was actively defrauding our father. Before I tell you what happened next, and how the rest of the day devolved into a literal crime scene, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have kept quiet to save the magic of Christmas? Or would you have set the whole thing on fire? I didn't even think. I just spoke. I looked my father dead in the eye and said, "Dad, don't worry about my judgment. Maybe you should worry about why Sarah and Marcus are talking about bridge loans and stealing from the firm's business account. Maybe you should check why she's so desperate for you to sign those trust papers today." The silence that followed was deafening. I saw the blood drain from Sarah's face. Marcus looked like he was going to vomit. My dad didn't scream at first. He just stood up, went to his office, and came back with his laptop. He's a numbers guy. It didn't take him long to find the discrepancies he had been too distracted to notice before. The clicking of the keys was the only sound in the house for 5 agonizing minutes. You could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, like a countdown to an explosion. When he saw the proof, the transfers, the forged signatures, the sheer scale of the theft, the perfect Christmas turned into a war zone. He didn't just yell. He told Sarah and Marcus to get out of his house, and that he was calling the authorities because the amount they took was no joke. It was over $500,000. He found out that Marcus had gambling debts that were spiraling out of control, and Sarah had been borrowing to keep up appearances for her friends. Sarah lost it. She started throwing things, actual heirloom ornaments, at me, screaming that I was a jealous loser who wanted to see her fail. She smashed a glass vase that my grandmother had given my mom, and the shards flew everywhere. She tried to lunge at me, her face contorted in a way I'd never seen before, but Leo stepped in the middle, pushing her back. Marcus tried to explain, rambling about bad investments and paying it back, but Dad wasn't hearing it. He was a man possessed, his face a terrifying shade of purple. He picked up the phone and actually dialed 911, reporting a grand larceny. Mom was on the floor, literally clutching the rug, begging everyone to just sit down and eat dinner, as if we could just ignore the police report. She kept saying, "The neighbors will see the cars. Robert, hang up. Think of the reputation. We can fix this quietly. We can just say it was a gift." But Dad was done with reputations. He looked at Mom like she was a stranger. Leo took Chloe's hand and just walked out, saying he couldn't be part of this toxicity anymore, which honestly, I respect. He told me he'd call me later, but for now he had to get Chloe away from the madness before someone got hurt. The police actually did show up because the neighbors heard the screaming and the sound of Sarah smashing the glass in the front door with a heavy brass reindeer as she was being forced out. Seeing my sister in handcuffs on Christmas Day, while the holiday lights twinkled on the gutters, was the most surreal moment of my life. The flashing blue and red lights reflected off the snow, making the whole scene look like a twisted nightmare. By 4 p.m., the house was silent. The turkey was cold and raw on the counter, forgotten. The dining room table was set for 12, but only the ghosts of our family were sitting there. My parents were in separate rooms, Dad in his office staring at the wall, and Mom in the bedroom with the door locked, sobbing so loudly I could hear it through the vents. I was sitting on the porch, watching the snow fall on the wreckage of my family. My dad came out eventually, sat next to me, and didn't say a word. He just stared into the distance. For the first time in my life, he didn't look like a high-level executive. He looked like an old man who had realized his life was built on sand. The aftermath has been brutal. Sarah and Marcus are facing legal trouble, and they've spent the last few weeks trying to guilt-trip me through text messages, calling me a snitch, and saying I've destroyed their lives. Sarah sent me a voice note crying about how her children, my nieces, won't have a mother if she goes to jail. It's a manipulation tactic, I know, but it still hurts. My parents are officially filing for divorce because my mom blamed my dad for valuing money over his daughter and calling the cops on family, while my dad blamed my mom for enabling a thief and ignoring the red flags for years. He found out Mom had known Sarah was struggling and had been giving her money secretly for months. They all blame me for lighting the match. My extended family has taken sides, with my aunts and uncles sending me nasty emails about family loyalty and how some things stay in the house. They act as if I committed the crime, not Sarah. But honestly, for the first time in my life, I don't feel like the black sheep. I feel like the only person who was willing to stop the pretending. The perfect family was a lie, and Christmas was just the wrapping paper covering a box full of rot. I lost my family this year, but I think I finally found my backbone. I've moved into a small apartment in the city, and for the first time, I don't feel the weight of their expectations crushing me. I don't have to worry about seating charts or reputation or solutions. I just have to worry about being honest. I realize that keeping the peace is just another way of saying, help me hide my sins. Peace at the cost of the truth isn't peace at all. It's just a temporary truce with a ticking bomb. Looking back, I realize that some traditions aren't worth keeping if they're built on a foundation of lies and manipulation. Sometimes, you have to let the fire burn so you can start over with something real. It was the worst Christmas of my life, but maybe it was the most honest one too. The holiday spirit is supposed to be about love and light, but sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is shine a light on the darkness. If you think I did the right thing by speaking up, or if you think I should have just let it go for one more day, let me know. Like this video if you were on my side and think that truth matters more than a fake holiday dinner. Subscribe for more stories like this where the drama is way too real, and please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. I'm reading all of them to see if I'm truly the one at fault here. I'll see you all in the next story.